Imagine a man who held the 21st century in his mind while living in the 19th. A visionary who lit up the globe, invented the modern world as we know it, and yet died completely broke, alone in a tiny hotel room, talking to pigeons. We are surrounded by his genius right now, the power charging your device, the Wi-Fi connecting you to this video, the radio waves bouncing through the air around you. They all trace back to one mind. But history is written by the victors. And for decades, this man was deliberately erased from the textbooks, overshadowed by businessmen who stole his glory. Today, we are opening the vault on the most brilliant, mysterious, and tragic inventor in human history. The man who truly invented the 20th century and perhaps the 21st. This is the story of Nikola Tesla. They say he was born at the exact stroke of midnight, right in the middle of a violent apocalyptic lightning storm in July 1856 in what is now Croatia. According to family legend, the midwife was terrified by the lightning, calling it a bad omen, and declared the child would be a child of darkness. But his mother snapped back, saying, "No, he will be a child of light." She could not have been more right. His fascination with electricity began innocently enough. As a small boy, he was stroking his pet cat in the dry winter air when he noticed a shower of sparks crackling from the fur. When he asked his father what it was, his father explained it was electricity, the same thing that causes lightning in the sky. Little Nikola wondered, is nature a gigantic cat? If so, who strokes its back? It can only be God, he concluded. This innocent spark ignited a lifelong obsession with the invisible forces that govern the universe. From a very young age, it was clear that Nikola was not like other children. He possessed an eidetic memory, meaning he could memorize entire books, visualize complex three-dimensional machinery in his head, and build or repair inventions without ever writing down a single blueprint. His mind was a relentless simulator. He would often experience blinding flashes of light, followed by intense hallucinations. To control this, he started using his imagination to travel to entirely new worlds in his head, meeting people, building cities, and running complex engineering tests in his mind before ever touching a piece of metal. As a young man, Tesla crossed the Atlantic with exactly 4 cents in his pocket, a few poems, and a letter of recommendation addressed to the most famous inventor on Earth, Thomas Edison. The letter simply read, "I know 2 great men. One is you, and the other is this young man." Edison hired Tesla immediately, but this was the beginning of one of the most infamous rivalries in the history of science. Edison was a brilliant businessman, but a brute force inventor. He relied on direct current, or DC, which was incredibly inefficient. DC power plants could only send electricity a few miles before it fizzled out, requiring a dirty, coal-burning power station on almost every city block. Tesla told Edison that his own system, alternating current, or AC, was vastly superior and could transmit electricity across hundreds of miles. Edison dismissed it as dangerous nonsense, but offered Tesla $50,000 if he could fix and improve his DC generators. Tesla worked day and night, essentially redesigning Edison's entire system from the ground up. But when he asked for the promised money, Edison laughed in his face, telling him he just didn't understand American humor. Betrayed and penniless, Tesla quit. For a time, the greatest mind in science was forced to dig ditches in New York for $2 a day just to survive. But true genius cannot be buried in a ditch. Eventually, word of Tesla's brilliant alternating current motor reached George Westinghouse, a rival of Edison, who recognized the world-changing potential of Tesla's design. This sparked the legendary War of the Currents. Edison fought dirty. He electrocuted stray animals in public to convince the masses that Tesla's AC power was a lethal menace. Edison's desperation reached a gruesome peak when he secretly funded the development of the first electric chair, making sure it used Westinghouse and Tesla's alternating current. He wanted the public to associate AC power with death and execution. Despite Edison's cruel smear campaign, the sheer efficiency and undeniable superiority of Tesla's system could not be stopped. Tesla was not just a scientist, he was a showman. At the 1893 World's Fair in Chicago, Tesla illuminated the entire exposition with hundreds of thousands of brilliant lights, powered entirely by his AC system. He stood in the center of the hall, passing thousands of volts of high-frequency electricity through his own body to prove it was perfectly safe, shooting sparks from his fingertips like a modern-day wizard. The crowd was utterly mesmerized. Tesla and Westinghouse had won. They were awarded the contract to harness the power of Niagara Falls, achieving the impossible and lighting up the entire Northeast. Tesla had officially arrived, and he was ready to push the boundaries of reality. He began experimenting with high frequencies and wireless energy. Long before the concept of Wi-Fi or wireless charging existed, Tesla was doing it. He built the Tesla coil, a device that could wirelessly light bulbs from across a room. He envisioned a world where power lines were obsolete, where electricity could be pumped into the earth and air, and anyone, anywhere in the world, could simply tap into it for free. In 1898, he debuted something so far ahead of its time that the audience thought it was magic or telepathy. At Madison Square Garden, Tesla placed a small, strange-looking boat in an indoor pool. With no wires connecting him to the vessel, he commanded the boat to steer left, right, and even flash its lights using a small wooden box with levers. It was the world's first remote-controlled vehicle. He had just invented the foundation of robotics, drones, and wireless communication, but when he pitched it to the military as an automated torpedo, they laughed him out of the room. They simply could not comprehend a machine operating without a human physically inside it. Tesla's ambitions were growing too large for ordinary minds to handle. He secured funding from J.P. Morgan, one of the wealthiest men in the world, to build Wardenclyffe Tower in New York. Tesla pitched it as a global communications network, a way to send messages and images instantly across the Atlantic. But secretly, Tesla had a much grander plan. He wanted to use the tower to transmit free, limitless electrical power to the entire planet. He believed he could turn the Earth itself into a giant electrical conductor. But when J.P. Morgan found out that Tesla wanted to give away free energy, he pulled his funding. Morgan famously asked, "If anyone can draw on the power, where do we put the meter?" The project collapsed. Wardenclyffe was torn down for scrap metal, and Tesla was plunged into massive debt. This marked the beginning of Tesla's dark and mysterious final chapters. As he aged, his mind, once his greatest asset, became his prison. He developed severe obsessive-compulsive disorder. He became obsessed with the number 3, refusing to stay in a hotel room unless its number was divisible by 3, and walking around a building 3 times before entering it. He became terrified of pearls, refusing to speak to women who wore them, and demanded his meals be served with exactly 18 napkins. But his scientific claims grew even more bizarre and fascinating. He claimed to have intercepted rhythmic, unnatural radio signals from space, believing he was the first human to receive communication from Martians. People called him crazy, but decades later, scientists suggested he might have actually been picking up signals from distant pulsars or cosmic storms, phenomena entirely unknown to science at the time. The most heavily guarded secret of his later years was his proposed Teleforce weapon, famously dubbed by the press as the Death Ray. As the clouds of World War II gathered, Tesla announced he had invented a particle beam weapon capable of melting airplane motors from 250 miles away. He claimed it would create an invisible wall of defense around any country, effectively ending all war by making invasion impossible. The United States government, previously dismissive of his eccentricities, suddenly became very interested. Tesla carried the blueprints for this superweapon exclusively in his head, refusing to write them down for fear of espionage. Or so he claimed. Towards the end of his life, destitute and living on credit in New York hotels, Tesla's closest companions were the city's pigeons. He would spend hours in the park feeding them and would leave his hotel window open so they could visit him. He developed a deep, almost spiritual connection with one particular white pigeon. He later wrote that he loved that pigeon as a man loves a woman, and that as long as he had her, there was a purpose to his life. When she died, he claimed a blinding light came from her eyes, and at that moment, he knew his life's work was finished. It was a tragic, heartbreaking end for a mind that had reshaped civilization. On January 7, 1943, at the age of 86, Nikola Tesla died alone in room 3327 of the New Yorker Hotel. But the story didn't end there. Almost immediately after his death, the FBI and the Office of Alien Property descended upon his room, seizing all of his trunks, documents, and research. They were desperate to find the secrets of the death ray. The government officially stated that nothing of value was found, declaring his final papers the ramblings of a fading mind. But for decades, conspiracy theorists and historians have wondered, did the government cover up his ultimate discoveries? Were his files hidden away in classified black projects? To this day, the complete contents of those missing trunks remain one of the greatest mysteries of modern science. Nikola Tesla was a man who lived a century in the future. He predicted smartphones in 1926, describing a device that would allow us to see and hear one another perfectly across thousands of miles, and that the instrument itself would be small enough to fit in a vest pocket. He envisioned renewable energy, capturing the power of the sun, wind, and water. Long before climate change was a whisper in the public consciousness, he was mocked, swindled, and forgotten by the very world he built. But time is the ultimate judge of greatness. Edison may have won the battle of wealth and fame in their lifetimes, but Tesla won the future. Every time you flip a switch, every time you send a text, every time you marvel at the modern world, you are looking at the legacy of a man who dared to pull the fire of the gods down to earth. If you want to uncover more stories of the brilliant, the mysterious, and the forgotten figures who shaped our world, hit that subscribe button, like this video, and let me know in the comments who we should investigate next. Until then, keep questioning the reality around you.